Larry's name is everywhere again. In the comments, in TikTok edits, in late-night Reddit threads, people whisper the same story like it's already proven. Larry isn't just Timmy's uncle. He's Timmy's real father. They freeze the same few frames, circle faces on screenshots, and repeat lines that start with, "I heard," as if that's evidence. And when the internet watched Larry die, only to see him later on that same porch after his own daughter admitted faking his death for money, the conspiracy went nuclear. If they lied about that, people thought, what else are they hiding? It didn't matter that the lie came from one desperate family member. To the internet, a single deception becomes a doorway. Once people feel misled, they go hunting for more. The paternity rumor, something that had floated aimlessly for months, suddenly felt to millions like a missing piece snapping into place. They didn't have documents. They didn't have DNA. They didn't have testimony from anyone with authority. But they had a story, and a story is often enough for people who prefer speculation over patience. The claim spread quickly. Larry was Timmy's biological father, and the family had tried to hide it for years. To strangers, it felt like the only explanation that made sense. They thought the resemblance was too strong, the silence too suspicious, the family structure too complicated. When people want something to be true, they read meaning into anything. A glance becomes guilt. A gesture becomes confession. A shared genetic trait becomes proof. The irony is that none of the early theorists asked the simplest question. Why would anyone believe this rumor in the first place? What made the idea so compelling? And why was Larry cast in the leading role? The internet built its theory on three pillars: appearance, circumstance, and narrative convenience. First, they pointed to facial similarities. The jawlines, the eyes, the speech patterns, the posture. But resemblance inside a family with generations of interrelated ancestry isn't surprising. When the same limited gene pool repeats itself for decades, relatives can begin to look almost interchangeable. What outsiders interpreted as evidence of fatherhood often had far simpler biological roots. Second, people highlighted the circumstances of Timmy's birth. The documented accounts refer to Lorraine, Timmy's mother, being assaulted by an unidentified man. That single fact, tragic and heavy, became kindling for speculation. The internet didn't care that the assailant had never been publicly named. Instead, they pointed at the most visible man in the video, the one who argued loudly, the one who looked stressed, the one who already carried the burden of viral judgment. In sensational storytelling, the loudest presence becomes the most suspicious one. Third, people wanted a narrative twist. The Whittaker story had already gone viral for its unusual and heartbreaking reality. But once the initial shock faded, audiences wanted escalation. They wanted a new angle, a darker layer, something scandalous to reinvent the content they kept consuming. The paternity rumor offered exactly that: a secret, a scandal, and a villain. It made the story feel more like entertainment and less like the life of a vulnerable family. What the internet created was not evidence, it was convenience. Larry fit the role they needed him to play. As the rumor grew, reaction channels picked it up. Commentators paused clips and spoke with the confidence of experts. Some insisted the resemblance was undeniable. Others claimed to have insider sources in the community. These so-called sources were rarely named and often repeated second-hand gossip. But anonymity gives false credibility online. When someone says, "I live near them," people listen. Whether it's true or not barely matters. Even those who didn't believe the rumor contributed to its spread. Debates, duets, stitches, and breakdowns, all of them kept the theory circulating. People argued fiercely in comment sections, citing pixelized screenshots like forensic evidence. A rumor repeated enough times becomes a rumor people remember. And once people remember it, they begin to repeat it as if they witnessed it themselves. Larry's own actions became part of the conspiracy simply because viewers didn't understand him. The man who had become a viral character in their minds was living a complicated, difficult life off camera. His blunt speech, defensive posture, and visible frustration read to outsiders as guilt rather than exhaustion. They interpreted anxiety as secrecy, anger as evidence, silence as confirmation. Every gesture became a clue in a case built entirely by strangers. When the fake death incident unfolded, It poured gasoline on the theory. People said, if they lied about this, what else have they lied about? The internet tends to forget that families under massive stress sometimes behave inconsistently, irrationally, or even deceptively, not because they are hiding sinister secrets but because poverty, disability, and lack of support create pressure no one on the outside can fully understand. Still, the rumor was given new life by the scandal, and Larry's name was cemented in the center of it. The more the rumor spread, the less people cared about the facts. They didn't care that no official record supported the claim. They didn't care that the documented description of Timmy's conception pointed to an unidentified assailant outside the immediate family. They didn't care that the family tree, however complicated, did not place Larry in the role they insisted he occupied. They wanted a story, and Larry was the character they chose. As the theory gained momentum, the narrative shifted from curious speculation to confident accusation. Thousands began speaking about Larry as though the matter had already been settled. They claimed, everybody down there knows, even though most had never been within 100 miles of Odd, West Virginia. People began commenting not just on videos featuring the Whittakers, but on unrelated clips, bringing the rumor with them like a badge of internet expertise. This forced the family deeper into isolation. The more the rumor swirled, the more people drove to the house. Some shouted questions from their cars. Others filmed without permission. A few attempted to ask Larry directly, as though he owed answers to people who treated his life like a soap opera plotline. Every stranger who arrived, every phone lifted toward the porch, every whisper from someone who knew nothing about the truth, they all hardened the anger inside Larry. His frustration grew not just from the rumor itself but from the way it consumed everything else. People no longer discussed poverty, resources, access to care, or systemic neglect. They didn't talk about disabilities or vulnerability or the emotional toll of viral fame. They talked only about paternity. A complex story was flattened into a single sensational question. Who fathered Timmy? That reduction affected how people viewed the family. It shaped how strangers treated them, how authorities approached them, and how the public judged every new development, including the removal of family members by state services. Whatever the reason behind the intervention, many online insisted it must have involved DNA, scandal, or secret findings, because the rumor had already scripted that outcome in their minds. The truth, however, remained unchanged. Nothing official tied Larry to the role the internet assigned him. The theory was born from pattern seeking, not evidence, from gossip, not documentation, from viral curiosity, not investigative truth. Yet the rumor was too powerful for silence to fix. Even when corrected, it found new hosts, commenters unwilling to let go of the story that made the Whittakers feel like characters instead of people. And Larry, who already struggled under the weight of viral exposure, became the unwilling protagonist of a scandal written entirely by people outside the home. As part 1 closes, the rumor continues circulating with the confidence of something proven, even though it never was. And the question now shifts from whether the rumor is true to why people were so eager to believe it, and what the consequences have been for the family caught in the center of this speculation. Comment below. If you have verifiable information, first-hand knowledge, local insight, or documented reporting that clarifies or challenges anything in this story, share it respectfully. We rely on facts, not guesses. Your contribution may help correct misinformation and bring accuracy to a conversation that has been dominated by rumor for far too long. The rumor did not just spread because people believed it. It spread because people wanted it to be true. A shocking secret, a hidden father, a cover-up. These elements made the Whittaker story feel more dramatic, more dangerous, more worth sharing. The internet thrives on controversy, and controversy thrives on suspicion. What began as speculation soon evolved into a fully developed narrative, complete with motives, imagined timelines, and theories about how the truth had supposedly been buried. As this narrative grew, Larry found himself portrayed as the architect of the scandal. People didn't ask whether he had the power to orchestrate a cover-up. They assumed he did. They looked at his frustration, his temper, his rough way of speaking, and interpreted all of it through the lens of guilt. The internet has a habit of turning personality traits into evidence, and in Larry's case, every appearance fed the image that had been created for him. The story escalated when reaction channels began piecing together videos that had nothing to do with paternity but framed them as clues. Larry raising his voice became a sign of defensiveness. Larry avoiding a question became a sign of fear. Larry sitting behind Timmy became a sign of dominance. None of this interpretation had grounding in fact. But audiences consuming the videos were not looking for facts. They were looking for signals that justified what they already believed. The idea of a cover-up gained momentum as people began to question why no official documents about Timmy's father were public. They ignored the reality that most families, especially those living in poverty or isolation, do not have extensive paper trails available online. Instead, they claimed the absence of evidence was proof of secrecy. This circular logic, insisting the lack of evidence confirmed wrongdoing, created a trap from which the truth could not escape. People expected scandal, so they found scandal. And once they found it, they defended it as though they had uncovered a crime. The rumor also flourished because it was easier for many viewers to embrace a dramatic explanation than to sit with the uncomfortable truth. Timmy's life was shaped by trauma, poverty, and generational isolation, not by a cinematic twist involving his uncle. For many online audiences, acknowledging the real cause required empathy, nuance, and a deeper understanding of Appalachian hardship. The rumor required none of that. It required only the willingness to repost and believe. This tension grew sharper when the state removed Timmy, Lorraine, and Ray from the home. People were already primed to see intervention as confirmation of the rumor. They ignored the broader context, concerns about living conditions, health, and safety, and latched onto the idea that authorities had discovered something the public had not been told. No official statement supported this, but the rumor had already built its own logic. People began saying things like, "They wouldn't take him for no reason," or "They must have found out who the dad is," as if state agencies were conducting secret paternity investigations rather than responding to visible vulnerability. For Larry, this moment marked a turning point in how he was perceived. He went from being a controversial figure online to being treated as a suspect in a story with no evidence. People spoke about him with the confidence of jurors who believed they had seen the whole case. But the case they saw was not real. It was a compilation of misunderstandings, rumors, and assumptions that replaced the complexity of the family's life with a narrative that viewers found more entertaining. This narrative began affecting how the family interacted with each other. The rumors seeped into their conversations, their arguments, their frustrations. Even those who did not believe it felt the weight of being judged by millions. When people outside the home talk about your family as if you are hiding a crime, it creates tension inside the home that is difficult to untangle. Larry bore the brunt of that tension. Some family members pressured him to address the rumor. Others told him to ignore it. A few questioned whether talking publicly would help or harm the situation. With no guidance, no media training, and no support, Larry responded the only way he knew how, with anger, confusion, and exhaustion. His reactions were then used as more evidence. The cycle became self-sustaining. Rumor, misinterpretation, reaction, more rumor. Online audiences rarely paused to question their role in that cycle. They didn't consider how their comments might distort perceptions or influence the family's emotional state. They didn't wonder whether their assumptions were harming real people. The internet makes it easy to treat others as characters rather than human beings, especially when those people live in isolated communities and have limited means to defend themselves. The idea of a cover-up grew alongside the rumor, not because there were facts supporting it, but because people misinterpreted every instance of confusion or miscommunication. Appalachia has long been a region plagued by stereotypes about secrecy and dysfunction. Those stereotypes made the rumor more believable to outsiders. They assumed a rural, impoverished family would naturally cover things up. They assumed silence was guilt. They assumed complexity was deception. And once the rumor solidified, people stopped asking whether it made sense. They only asked how deep the cover-up went. Some commenters began constructing elaborate theories. They claimed the family tree was intentionally falsified. They said relatives were lying to protect Larry. They insisted the assault described in past reporting was invented to shield him. None of these claims had evidence. Each theory contradicted the previous one. But the internet doesn't require consistency, only momentum. And momentum was abundant. People ignored fundamental questions. Why would Larry cover anything up? How would he have the ability to manipulate records? Why would social services hide test results? Why would neighbors stay silent? Why would the filmmaker risk legal consequences? Instead, they replaced these questions with certainty. They saw what they wanted to see. A cover-up makes a sensational story. A tragedy rooted in violence and generational struggle does not. And the internet has always favored sensation over reality. Larry's public image became defined by a rumor he never created and could never escape. Even when he tried to defend himself, his tone was interpreted as aggression. When he refused to discuss the rumor, it was seen as avoidance. When he expressed exhaustion, it was framed as guilt. There was no acceptable way for him to respond. Any reaction fed the narrative already in place. This dynamic didn't just damage Larry's reputation. It damaged the family's relationship with the outside world. Visitors who once came with curiosity now arrived with accusations. People shouted questions from car windows. Others filmed him without consent, hoping to catch a confession or an emotional outburst. What they got instead was a man pushed beyond his limit, trying to protect what remained of his family's dignity. The community around Odd felt the consequences too. Neighbors became wary of strangers driving through. Rumors spread beyond the internet and into local conversations. Even people who knew the family struggled to distinguish gossip from truth. Larry was not only fighting against online misinformation, he was fighting against how that misinformation reshaped the physical world around him. Meanwhile, the rumor overshadowed every other issue the family faced. Discussions about poverty, unsafe housing, lack of healthcare, generational trauma, and disability became secondary. Instead of focusing on how to help the family sustainably, the internet preferred to analyze faces, speculate about genetics, and chase a scandal that did not exist in any official record. What made the rumor so durable was not evidence, it was emotion, suspicion, curiosity, outrage. These emotions override facts easily. Once an internet audience believes a story, they begin looking for affirmation rather than truth. They consume content selectively, interpret details creatively, and create meaning where there is none. In the case of the Whittakers, this process turned an already vulnerable family into the center of a paternity drama that millions treated like entertainment. But behind the drama, the truth remained simple and deeply painful. Timmy's life began with violence. The man responsible was never identified publicly. Larry's role in the family has never been documented as paternal. The rumor existed because outsiders preferred a sensational lie to an uncomfortable truth. As Part 2 comes to a close, the consequences of this rumor continue to ripple outward. Larry's reputation remains shaped by strangers. The family's privacy remains shattered. And the world continues to debate a question built on speculation rather than evidence. The reality is still waiting to be heard, not from the internet but from those who actually know the truth. Comment below, what do you think? The more the rumor spread, the more it transformed from speculation into something heavier, an accusation that reshaped the public's entire understanding of the Whittaker family. What started as curiosity turned into a collective obsession, and that obsession demanded a villain. Larry, whether he wanted the role or not, became the central figure in the story millions believed they were uncovering. Part of the internet's confidence came from the assumption that rural families, especially poor and isolated ones, must be hiding something. It is a stereotype deeply ingrained in online conversations about Appalachian communities. The idea that a secret could exist, undiscovered, unspoken, felt believable to outsiders who didn't understand the culture, the landscape, or the family's history. They simplified a lifetime of hardship into a narrative they found more satisfying. And in that narrative, Larry was no longer a struggling man overwhelmed by attention. He became the face of a scandal that had never been proven. What most viewers never considered was how drastically the rumor altered the dynamics within the family. They saw only the fragments captured in videos. Moments of frustration, confusion, arguments, but they didn't see the ripple effect behind those moments. When millions of people believe a lie about you, It changes how you see yourself, how you interact with loved ones, how you handle stress. The family members found themselves in an impossible position. If they addressed the rumor directly, they feared people would twist their words. If they stayed silent, their silence became a weapon used against them. The rumor created tension inside the home that did not exist before. It pulled relationships taut, made small disagreements grow into larger ones, and forced old wounds to reopen. Larry felt trapped, cornered by accusations he did not understand. He had no guide for navigating public rumors, no experience managing internet narratives, no resources to protect his name. He only had his emotions: anger, exhaustion, fear, and these emotions were interpreted as proof by people who already believed he was guilty. The internet forgot something crucial. Larry did not choose to be public. He did not sign up for a platform. He did not ask to be a character in a global conversation. He became one because strangers found his family interesting enough to turn into content. And once he became content, the world felt entitled to dissect him, assign motives to him, and rewrite his relationships to fit their theories. As the rumor intensified, people began to speak about him in harsh, dehumanizing terms. Some called him a monster. Others labeled him a predator. These words did not come from any official statement, investigation, or document. They came from speculation running unchecked through social media. This kind of public shaming has real consequences. It changes how a person is treated in their community. It changes how authorities view them. It changes how they respond emotionally to stress and confusion. And it changes the trajectory of their life in ways the internet never has to face. What many forget is that families like the Whittakers already live on the edge of instability. Poverty presses on every decision. Disability shapes every interaction. Lack of support stretches people thin. Adding millions of strangers demanding answers, spreading theories, and calling them liars pushes them beyond a breaking point that most online audiences cannot comprehend. But the rumor didn't only damage Larry, it damaged the narrative surrounding Timmy as well. Timmy became the centerpiece of a story built around curiosity rather than compassion. His life, already shaped by challenges beyond his control, was reduced to a rumor about his father. His medical struggles, communication difficulties, and vulnerability were overshadowed by accusations he never chose to confront. People online debated his conception as if it were a plot twist, forgetting entirely that it is a traumatic reality for those involved. The fact that Timmy's birth was connected to violence was rarely acknowledged by those spreading the rumor. Instead, they speculated about paternity like it was entertainment. They ignored the real harm caused by turning a survivor's origin into clickbait. They erased the victim at the center of the story because the rumor made the narrative more exciting. This kind of erasure is common when the internet latches onto a vulnerable family. Viewers become so fixated on the drama that they forget they are speaking about real lives. They forget that their theories reach the people they talk about. They forget that words can wound as deeply as actions. The consequences became especially visible when people began visiting the home. Cars pulled up uninvited. Strangers shouted questions out their windows. Some filmed Timmy directly, hoping to capture new clues for their online platforms. Others tried to interrogate Larry, convinced they could force a confession or provoke an emotional meltdown they could upload for views. Imagine living in a place where every car that turns down your road might be someone demanding answers for something you didn't do. Imagine knowing your name is being spoken in thousands of rooms by people who have never met you. Imagine having your entire life judged by people who only know a handful of moments captured on camera. This is what the rumor did to Larry. It placed him under constant surveillance. It made him a target of suspicion. It stripped him of privacy, dignity, and peace. But the rumor also fueled a broader problem: misinformation becoming truth through repetition. As more people repeated the idea that Larry had covered up paternity, the rumor transformed from guesswork to gospel. Even those who weren't convinced found themselves wondering. Curiosity became doubt. Doubt became belief. Belief became certainty. This pattern is not unique to the Whittakers, it is a hallmark of viral misinformation. But the stakes here were higher because the victims were not public figures. They had no power to correct the narrative, no platform to defend themselves, no legal team, no PR strategy. They had only their voices many viewers dismissed as unreliable, uneducated, or untrustworthy. This dismissal created the final ingredient needed for the rumor to thrive: the belief that the family was incapable of telling the truth. Once that belief took hold, everything they said was interpreted through the harshest lens. If Larry denied the rumor, people accused him of lying. If he ignored it, people said he was hiding something. If another family member defended him, they were dismissed as part of the cover-up. The rumor became unchallengeable. This is how internet myths become permanent. Not because they are true, but because no one accepts any version of events that contradicts the myth. The damage went beyond reputation. It affected how the family's remaining members were treated after the removal of Timmy, Lorraine, and Ray. People speculated wildly about the reasons for the intervention. They insisted the state had discovered something horrific. They claimed officials were acting on paternity information that was never made public. But these claims ignored the reality of how adult protective services operate. They intervened because of documented living conditions and health concerns, not because of online gossip. Yet for many viewers, the rumor overshadowed every official explanation. It became the only explanation they believed. And that belief shaped the commentary, the harassment, the speculation, and the pressure put on the family and the filmmaker alike. As the story continued, the rumor took on a life of its own, separate from the people it harmed. It became a symbol, a narrative that the internet felt entitled to explore, rewrite, and debate without any concern for truth or consequence. People forgot that rumor is not evidence. People forgot that resemblance is not proof. People forgot that stress is not guilt. People forgot that silence is not confession. They forgot that the people at the center of the story are not characters. They're a fragile family struggling to survive. Part 3 ends with the rumor standing stronger than it ever should have, not because it is true but because millions of people gave it power. The myth continues to overshadow the reality. The speculation continues to drown out the truth. And the consequences continue to shape the lives of those who never asked for the world to watch them. The truth remains buried, not by a cover-up but by the noise. The most damaging part of the rumor was not its content but its certainty. Once people decide a story is true, they stop looking for answers. They stop questioning their assumptions. They stop listening to the people who are actually involved. Larry found himself shouting into a void, not because he lacked a voice, but because the world had already made up its mind about him. Every denial was treated as a lie. Every attempt to explain was dismissed as manipulation. Every expression of frustration was taken as proof. The internet accused him of a cover-up, but no one stopped to ask the most basic question. A cover-up of what? There were no documents pointing to him. No testimony. No DNA. No investigation naming him. The only thing linking Larry to the rumor was the rumor itself. That circular logic had become the backbone of the entire conspiracy. Yet the belief persisted because the internet rarely requires proof. It requires a compelling narrative, and Larry had become the villain of a story told by strangers looking for drama. Meanwhile, the reality inside the home was unraveling. The rumor didn't just harm Larry's reputation. It influenced the decisions of people outside the family who felt justified in treating them like a case file instead of a household. Strangers who visited the home brought tension with them. Some arrived demanding answers, convinced they were uncovering hidden truth. Others came filming everything they saw, hoping to capture a slip-up, a confession, or a confrontation they could post online. This invasion chipped away at the family's sense of safety. Timmy, already vulnerable and easily overwhelmed, absorbed the stress even if he couldn't articulate it. His routines were disrupted. His privacy was violated. His world, once predictable, became unpredictable. The rumor turned him into an object of investigation rather than a person. And the worst part was that none of this chaos brought the family help. The time, energy, and attention spent chasing rumors overshadowed the real issues: poverty, deteriorating housing, limited healthcare, and isolation. The internet focused on a fatherhood theory instead of asking what the family needed to survive. Speculation replaced compassion. Accusations replaced understanding. The filmmaker himself became part of the conflict. Some blamed him for creating the environment that allowed the rumor to flourish. Others defended him fiercely, arguing that he revealed a hidden America. But lost in these debates was the fact that the family had become a cultural spectacle, not because the world cared about their well-being, but because the world cared about the story they represented. A viral story. A shocking story. A tragic story. And in tragedy, the internet searches for culprits more eagerly than it searches for solutions. Larry's role became so distorted online that even moments filmed years apart were stitched together to create a version of him that didn't exist. His loud voice was edited to sound threatening. His exhaustion was interpreted as menace. His frustration was recast as control. The internet built a fictional version of Larry and treated it as fact. But the real Larry is not the man the rumor claimed he was. He is a man caught in a storm of attention he didn't invite, whose image was shaped by outsiders who wanted to make sense of a complicated family through the simplest and most salacious explanation they could find. He was not hiding a scandal. He was trying to survive one. The rumor's final transformation was the most dangerous one. It became a justification. A justification for harassment. A justification for driving onto the family's property. A justification for treating them like suspects. A justification for assuming they deserved whatever happened next. People forgot that speculation is not harmless. It creates real pressure, real danger, and real consequences. It pushes families apart. It encourages strangers to invade private spaces. It influences how authorities and institutions interpret a family's situation. It turns vulnerable people into targets of collective fixation. The truth is that no matter what internet theorists believed, the documented reality remained unchanged. Timmy's father was never publicly identified by authorities. The assault that led to his conception points to an unknown man, not a confirmed family member. Larry's name appears nowhere in any official record as Timmy's father. The rumor lived only in the mouths and keyboards of those who repeated it. And yet it shaped the Whittakers' lives more than any fact ever did. The damage cannot be undone by deleting comments or correcting misinformation. Once a rumor becomes part of public consciousness, it takes on permanence. It attaches itself to the people at its center, clinging to them even when disproven. Larry may never escape the shadow the internet cast over him. Timmy may never be seen without the rumor influencing how viewers interpret his life. And the family may never regain the privacy they lost. Forgets. Stories about real people have real consequences. The Whittakers are not symbols or characters or mysteries to solve. They are a family navigating hardship in one of the least forgiving environments in America, thrust into a spotlight they never asked for and burdened by a narrative they had no power to control. If this story teaches anything, it's that speculation is not investigation, and suspicion is not evidence. The rumor that claimed Larry fathered Timmy was never supported by fact, only by fascination. And fascination, when left unchecked, becomes a harmful force that reshapes lives in ways most viewers never consider. Before repeating a theory, before spreading a claim, before deciding you've figured it out, consider this. Someone's life may be changed by what you say. Someone's reputation may be destroyed. Someone's trauma may be reopened. And someone who never asked to be in the public eye may carry the weight of your words for the rest of their life. The Whittakers deserve more than rumors. They deserve truth, privacy, and humanity. And it starts with us choosing not to add more noise to their already difficult reality. Comment below what do you think. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.